So, welcome to the New Jersey Aware, a mental health, religious, and spiritual leaders coalition. Tonight, we have a number of new guests coming from even outside of New Jersey. We are definitely with a vision that we want to go from New Jersey Aware to USA Aware to Global Aware. And AWARE stands for Are We Aware of Religious Experience? It's really, are we aware of religious and spiritual experience in mental health crisis? So this is definitely a cross-national meeting tonight. And we have a number of new guests that will just show up for tonight. Others are looking to join the coalition. So I'm going to invite Reverend Ronald Sparks from Bethel AME in Freehold to give a blessing over every single person that shows up and watches this and over our meeting and our mission.
Gracious God, for the time that we have, we ask that you would be with us, that you guide and direct us on the mission that you have put before us. We pray for every person who's on this call from the various locations. We pray for those who are on the way, and not just praying for them, but in their duties, in their mission, in their jobs, that those who are dealing with mental health crisis would be a type of mind, first for you, and then for us to do what we need to do. So we thank you for what we're going to do, and we thank you for the outcomes. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. So thank you for that blessing. So Reverend Sparks, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Some people already know you, but our new guests don't. And you're very active, not only in the church community, but in the mental health and crisis response. So why don't you start as an intro?
As Janet said, I'm a pastor of Bethel AME Church. That's one of the hats that I have. I'm also a chaplain for the Monmouth County Prosecution Office, Monmouth County Sheriff's Office, and the Vigo Borough Police Department. I've gone through the CIT training, and so as part of being a chaplain, to work with law enforcement as well as mental health professionals. I also co-run two other nonprofits who our goal is to bring agencies, community, faith-based business all together, and to talk about the diversity of the people who come to those meetings. Um, and so I am in the community, and so that's me in a nutshell.
And it's
Oh,
usually,
as far as the mental health aspect, I come by personal or lived experience. And so I became an advocate based on that lived experience. And so anyone who's dealing with mental health crisis, I understand. And I think we need to have empathy for them and to help get rid of the stigma associated with it.
well, that was a great,
Amen.
amen, amen. Thank you for saying that. Anybody that wants to share that we have lived experience without going into the detail at this moment, we appreciate it. And that is a big part of your passion behind your work. You want to make a difference. So whatever had happened gets to be improved. That's pretty much, what we're all here for. And I was going to play with every time I show up at a meeting, there's Reverend Sparks. I just go someplace in Monmouth or Ocean County or maybe in New Jersey, and it's like, oh, Reverend Sparks is there. So we're grateful for you to be so consistent as a member since the beginning. And Reverend Sparks is also featured in our docuseries, gave us some time to be filmed with your thoughts. And the term empathy is one that we're going to just really hammer in the docuseries. Empathy, 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 empathy. That doesn't really cost a lot. And it's been a powerful message you offered us, Reverend Sparks. So thank you for being here. If Reverend Akins does not show up, I'm going to ask you, as we get into the agenda, to comment on We Are Monmouth down the road, in a little bit before we close.
Sure.
So since Dr. Lou is not here yet, Calvin, Dr. Chatlos, I'm going to ask you to comment on our second guest, Reverend Cesar Robiano. I met him at Jersey Shore in New Jersey. Jersey Shore Hospital System and Hackensack Meridian Hospital System is a very big entity. And I had the pleasure of meeting a whole faith council. They meet, they get together, they're throughout the hospital. But what was unique is that they go on the psychiatric ward. Joshua, how about that?
Bring it.
They go on the hospital ward in all, different faiths. And Father Caesar, when we were at a meeting, he actually was speaking about the whole bioethics movement, or what he is very much passionate about. He has a PhD in neurobiology. He is in a parish. And it piqued my interest because I'd like to have bioethics commented on the psychiatric board. So Dr. Calvin, just comment on what you think that could be like, and if you've even ever heard of it on the psychiatric ward, meaning when a patient doesn't want meds, can a bioethics team come in?
Yeah, I haven't heard the term bioethics used in that manner, but I'm assuming it has to do with the whole issue of informed consent, both for admission and for medications, that truly it's unethical, as well as to some large degree illegal to force medications, to force consent. So I'm assuming that it has more to do with that, and that their role in the hospital is probably, I would have to talk with them, more of a patient advocate. I've worked at hospitals where there were patient advocates that made sure that the patients got their day in court and helped them to prepare for that. So unless there's some other use, I'm not sure how he would be using it in a psychiatric hospital.
I don't either. It was my call to say, how do we do it? And Dr. Lou, I'm sorry I didn't see you before, so welcome. And let's almost transition right to Dr. Lou. Dr. Chatlos, you invited Dr. Lou. We are so honored, hugely honored. And anybody who has not watched Dr. Lou's video, much research, but on the Spiritual Awakening International, it is to me, a powerful, full, comprehensive video on everything we want you to say in 5 minutes, Dr. Lou. But we have a few people not showing up, so we can have more time. I do know your time is limited. Dr. Lou comes from California. And Dr. Chatlos, if you wanted to say a few words of invitation, and then we'll give Dr. Lou the stage.
Yeah, just for people to know, Dr. Lou's in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at University of California at Davis, and was very instrumental in working with the DSM-4 and getting at least something to do with religion and spirituality. And they finally got the religious or spiritual problem as a V code. And I met Dr. Lou again recently at the American Psychiatric Associations, where this was new for me, that he's trying to get an added part to that code to include moral injury. And what we're finding in our experience with people that have had spiritual experiences, been mistreated, part of the suffering really is a moral injury. So thank you. Welcome, Dr. Lou. I am thrilled to see you here. I really appreciate it, and let you have the time to tell people what you're up to. Yes. And maybe a little bit about moral injury. We haven't discussed that term much.
Yeah. Sure. And for the sake of everyone, kind of give us a 1994 to 2013 to now. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Calvin, for inviting me, and Janet for connecting me here. I've not used this platform before. Can I share a screen by hitting present?
You know what? I'm not familiar either, but I think we're good to just hear your voice, if that's okay.
Okay, let me give it a try here. It says share screen. It says slides, share screen. Here. Share screen. Okay.
I'm not familiar with this platform enough, but we're
Okay.
happy to just hear your voice. And I'll share slides and the video after. That's okay.
Okay. Here. Okay. I'm getting to it. Hold on. Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, where do we see the slides? I uploaded them to the platform. How do I actually show them? Okay, here they're up now. Okay, now.
There we go.
Okay, I can't believe it. Okay.
Ah!
Good.
Okay. Well, this is a slide presentation of a general session 90-minute workshop at the APA annual meeting that just happened in early May in New York City. And it was presented by the chair was John Petit, who's an associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard, Richard Cowden, who was a last-minute substitute for Jennifer Wortham, who works at the Center for Human Flourishing at Harvard, myself, and Seth Matson, who is a graduating medical student at Baylor, and he's going to be a first-year psychiatry resident at McLean's. And so I'm just going to skip ahead to here are the folks here. Because of time, I'm just going to skip ahead to the portion that I did, if that's okay. Okay, here we go. Right. Okay, so this will take about 10 minutes. Is that okay? I hope so. Yeah. So let me give you the timeline, and then I'll go back and go over the details here in case some of you may not be aware of the total history here. Is back in 1994, we're talking 30 years ago now, Robert Turner, a psychiatrist, David Lukoff, a clinical psychologist, and myself submitted a proposal for religious or spiritual problem, which was accepted for the DSM-4 as a V code in the section of DSM that's entitled Other Conditions That May Be a Focus of Clinical Attention. And I'll describe what this section means momentarily. But basically, this is a non-pathological category of distressing experiences involving religion or spirituality. So instead of calling one's belief that God has abandoned me as a delusion, as a symptom of a mental disorder, it should be seen properly as a religious or spiritual problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then also an outline for cultural formulation was added that provides 4 areas. When we say, what are the cultural issues in this case? Well, this outline provides a listing of 4 issues, one of them being cultural identity. And the second area are the cultural stressors and supports in the person's life. Okay, then in the 2013, the DSM-5 came out. The religious or spiritual problem was retained unchanged. The outline for cultural formulation was revised. And in that revision, religion was added as an aspect of cultural identity that should be assessed. I should also mention in the DSM-4, in the outline for cultural formulation, religion was mentioned as a potential area of support for a patient, religion. And then Also new in DSM-5 was the cultural formulation interview, which is a list of 16 questions to help clinicians gather the information for the outline for cultural formulation. Now, I go over this in great detail in that Spiritual Awakenings International video, which I think Janet had appended to the announcement.
Yeah.
That was a presentation, I think, that lasted 45 minutes, in which I go over this in great detail, the DSM-5 version. So I go over all of those aspects of the outline for cultural formulation and the cultural formulation interview. Now, there's the core CFI, but then there are also 12 supplementary modules which give additional questions for deeper dives into particular issues. And one of the 12 supplementary modules is on religion, spirituality, and moral traditions. And so there are about 19 questions in these 4 categories that you can use to help clinicians gather information, to probe more deeply, to understand the patient's experiences. So I do recommend this supplementary module very much here in your work. Now you can access them if you go to www.dsm5, that's a numerical 5.org, and look for supplementary modules. You'll find it. I think it's number 5. Or you could just Google supplementary modules DSM-5, and I think you'll get it. If you have any problems, just email me. Now, for the DSM-5 TR stands for text revision, in which 3/4 of the text of DSM-5 was revised. However, the diagnostic criteria for the mental disorders was largely unchanged. And this came out in March of 2022. And so the religious spiritual problem was retained unchanged. I'll show you that definition in just a moment. The V codes were renamed the Z codes to align with ICD-10. The introduction to that section was revised. The outline for cultural formulation was revised. And happy to report that in the section entitled Cultural Identity, spirituality was also added in addition to religion, which was pre-existing, as an area to be assessed as part of cultural identity. And the CFI and the supplementary modules were retained unchanged. So this is the definition that goes back to 1994. And this is the first part of it, as you can see. And this is unchanged. It's a category of distressing experiences. That's the important thing. It's distressing experiences that might bring someone to a clinician involving loss or questioning of faith, problems associated with conversion to a new faith, or questioning of other spiritual values, such as having a mystical experience or a near-death experience, and being distressed about it and coming to a clinician. So instead of saying, well, you have a psychotic symptom here and a psychotic disorder, see, that's the psychopathology track. We're saying that it should be considered a religious or spiritual problem. This indeed is the definition. Any questions?
We're going to take your slides off and let's just have a few moments.
No, let me keep going then.
Oh, okay.
So in the introduction to this section, in the DSM-4, as you can see, this can otherwise affect the diagnosis, course, prognosis, or treatment of a mental disorder. So this is important. If someone is distressed about God is punishing me for my sins, that could exacerbate someone's schizophrenia or major depression. But the important thing is that these are not mental disorders. These are not mental disorders. And our rationale in an article that we published, we felt that this would help improve diagnostic assessment, reduce iatrogenic harm from misdiagnosis, improve treatment, and encourage training in this area. Now, in the introduction to the DSM-5 TR to this section, very important, that was added, why should these conditions be coded or diagnosed? And added in the yellow there is that if it plays a role in the initiation or exacerbation of a mental disorder, or constitutes a problem that should be considered in the treatment plan. So if a patient, when you ask a patient, well, what brought you in today? And the patient says, well, God is punishing me for my sins, and I've lost my faith in God. Well, instead of just ignoring that, saying, well, that's not part of any diagnostic criteria that I'm aware of, let's go on to how are you sleeping and eating and all of that. This is saying that this might be involved in the exacerbation of a mental disorder, and we need to diagnose it and maybe put it on the treatment plan so that we get a religious or spiritual consultation if we are not really familiar with these matters. Now, this just details the work that was done going back to fall of 2021 from that Harvard Human Flourishing Program and also the Duke Center for Theology, Spirituality, and Health. That's the Harold Koenig Center on this whole issue of moral injury. And a work group was formed. I came in at the latter stages of this, and they did all these kinds of reviews, and we've submitted the proposal to the DSM steering committee. And we learned in April of 2024 that there was preliminary approval from the DSM steering committee of the proposal, but this is explicitly pending review and approval from the Assembly and the Board of Trustees. So this is not a done deal. It's not finalized. It's only finalized when the Assembly and the Board approve of this change, which is consistent with all the changes in DSM. So what is the change? Well, this is the change. What you see underlined are the additions. So it's entitled now Religious, Spiritual, or Moral Problem. You can see in the first sentence, or moral problem was added. And then in the last sentence gives some examples. So moral problems include experiences such as moral injury and moral distress that disrupts one's understanding of right and wrong, or sense of goodness of oneself, others, or institutions. And so, as you are probably aware, I mean, there's a huge literature now on moral injury, moral distress, especially, for example, healthcare providers during the pandemic and how they had just terrible situations that they were placed in, causing moral injury, as well as healthcare professionals in general. Even without the COVID, they were experiencing moral injury, as well as the vast literature involving veterans, who were in combat situations and were experiencing this. Okay, so I think that's my last slide, and I'm not sure how to stop this, but go ahead. Now we have questions.
I'm gonna see if how do we stop this?
Yeah,
I'll let people comment because we're going to pretty much go to other introductions, and
there we go.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. So those of you who did not know about the religious spiritual part of the DSM, you now have an orientation and you see where it's going. So while we have Dr. Lou here, one or two questions, and then I want to go on to all the other introductions. Comments? I'm going to start with you, Carlito, because you did not know about this when I asked you today. So comment from you.
What I guess I can provide feedback on is thank you for giving me a lot more technical knowledge. Now that I have something online too while you're talking, I can reference it. What came to mind for me was not only, I guess, context of where that person's at, but also the community that the person's in, and that possible spiritual bullying they're receiving from someone who has a role that they're supposed to minister to them in an authority level, but then they've been abused in that sense where now they're distorted. So a lot of technical stuff here. I look forward to researching more. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yep.
Josh, I'm going to ask you to comment because you're on the other end of the spectrum. I'm very familiar with this, but you were excited to see the moral injury piece come in.
I'm excited to be here in general, and thanks for that, Dr. Lee. So it's interesting because I just came from a San Diego faith-based lunch where what we do with the Faith-Based Academy is we have a grant by innovation funding to train mental health providers in the power of faith and faith leaders in the power of mental health. And I was sitting next to the director of education, and she's like, do you know what I think we need to train on? Moral injury. I was like, that's amazing, because right after this, I think that God is doing something in our midst, and it's amazing to be his hands and feet. I think that it's bubbling up all over the place. Like a pot boils, there'll be a little boil there, and then suddenly it just all starts boiling. So it's really cool to be that fusion of the West Coast and the East Coast. And I'm on the West Coast here with you, Dr. Lee. So a little introduction to myself is I experienced that firsthand, diagnosed bipolar type 1, 6 involuntary psychiatric hospitalizations, 2 arrests, 100% a spiritual experience. Now, my first psychosis, I was in South Africa, where I'm from, and I was with my brother the one time, and someone who descends from the Khoisan Bushmen, who had a shamanic perspective the second time. I came out of that psychosis in about 4 hours and didn't go back in for years. But the first time this happened to me in America, watcha! I was arrested. They thought that I was on LSD. It led to this whole deeper spiral. So now it's become my absolute passion. I got my bachelor's in psychology, then my master's in theology from Fuller Theological Seminary. And I work with NAMI San Diego and Interfaith in bringing this fresh paradigm shift to the field, a paradigm shift of neurodiversity. I liked what you were saying there. There can be different ways of being wired. And when we're told that our wiring is wrong and distorted, actually it's doing a disservice to humanity at large, because diversity is the natural order. God set up diversity by design. And so I'm excited to be here. This is my what I do. I created a curriculum called Neurodiversity Gifts, actually with the University of California, San Diego, in helping people navigate these gifts. I also have a mental health ministry, Aslan's Way, a Jesus-lit mystical mental health experience, because I believe that this is disoriented mysticism. A lot of this is, like Dr. Joseph Campbell says, the person in psychosis drowning in the same water in which the mystic swims with delight. If we can teach people how to swim, man, we're going to release a generation of prophets. We're going to change the reductionist materialist paradigm. And it's exciting to be on board with all you guys in 2024. So thanks for having me here.
Well, I'm going to say thank you, Josh, for managing the time, because you were going close to last, but it worked to go right after Dr. Lou. Perfect. I'm going to keep it moving so we get at least introductory time. And then I'll extend it after 8 o'clock for anybody that wants to stay. I'd like to invite Dr. Olivia and Kathy to introduce just generally Guardian. We've been talking, Kathy, for, 8 months, less than a year. And you brought Dr. Olivia in because of my admiration for what Guardian's doing with a holistic and spiritual approach to behavioral health, as well as recovery. So, Kathy, why don't you just at least introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it over to Dr. Olivia.
Sure. She's normally the speaker here, but I'll chime in. So Kathy Davis, National Director of Sales Operations over at formerly Guardian Recovery Network, now Guardian Recovery. Started as a very small intervention practice by Joshua Scott, who is the CEO, and is now turned into, I don't know, Olivia I don't even know. In the past couple of years, they've acquired facilities all across the country and have recently, over the past few years, really dived into the realm of not just primary SUD, but more so mental health. And that is where Olivia comes in.
So yes, Dr. Olivia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What an inspirational group, and it's so refreshing for me because my background is in natural and integrative medicine. So, I've sort of always started on the outside of what was the standard for any and all treatment. And so that you're not always operating in a vertical that what you do and what you're passionate about gets recognition. So it's really intriguing and exciting and encouraging to me to hear all of you talk about recognizing the energetic etiology of every pathology. And I think that when we recognize, as we move with patients and within ourselves, that ultimately a human being at its most cellular microcosm is atomic. So it's energetic. And so we all know with basic laws of physics that energy can never be destroyed. It can only be created and transferred. And so there is a transference of energy in every physiological as well as mental health pathology and or disorder. So to just hear the dialogue that's occurring is, as again, I keep saying it's really exciting to me. I am the National Director of Mental Health Services for Guardian Recovery, i.e. Bishop Health. So Bishop Health is Guardian Recovery's sort of answer to the really successful programming that we had instituted across the country. As Kathy said, began really small about 5 years ago in Florida. And has grown to Colorado, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Maine. I'm trying to think. Sort of the list gets shorter of places that we aren't working on getting into to facilitate care. And what has been incredibly rewarding for me is to introduce, as an accessory to all of our facilities, the mental health IOP and OP options, which include the use of psychedelic drugs such as ketamine, with brand label Spravato. So we are doing really, really, in my opinion, monumental things, treating specifically the veteran population. When I first came on board, it was very apparent to me that the use of psychedelics to help treat complex forms of PTSD as well as depression, anxiety, and a wide array of other things was being so underutilized. And we were already providing this incredible standard of care along with TMS and psychotherapy. We were able slowly but surely to form a really great connection within the VA, and we now treat veterans in our facilities and are a member of the VA CCN. So I always love the intersection of biology and energetics and psychology, because it's really all wings of the same bird. That's the holistic self that we really want to address and treat at Guardian. So thank you all for being here. I'm really, really fascinated to hear each of your experiences and sort of how you've integrated that into your practice and into your life. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And again, tonight we like to keep a time limit for everyone. Our introductions are so that we can talk through over the summer on LinkedIn, on email, on the phone. Dr. Liu, I just wanted to, support you. If you needed to get off, you're welcome to stay, but I thought you might have had only a short time. So would you like to stay till 8? Or
I can stay a little longer to take any questions as people introduce themselves.
Okay.
And I'm typing things in the chat too. Yeah.
Okay, let me, oh, did I miss that? All right, so let's move on to Carlito. You're like among the first, the latest team members, and you do want to get more involved other than just a visitor. You have mental health experience, you have spiritual and very specifically Christian crisis counseling experience. And then you have business experience. So tell us a little bit more about your background. And you have lived experience.
Yes. Without further ado, I guess.
Yes,
So,
go for it.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you, Janet. And I guess the way to put it is, by day, I work a job as a startup growth company with a friend of mine. It's in an industry called employee owned. We do software, but that's not really what I do. What I've been doing for quite a while over the past, I don't know, at least a dozen years now, is so involved in crisis counseling because of my lived experience, right? So it started out with my own personal, similar to what Josh said. I had, spiritual trauma, abuse in a church community, hospitalized a couple times. Outpatient program is what saved me, I should say. So hearing about IOP and hearing about Guardian Recovery, certainly a lot of, must needs there. And then from that, I became a huge scholar of DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, big fan of it. I believe there's a lot of cross section between that and disciples of Christ who want to put into play behaviors that they want to apply biblically, really behaviors. So mental health has been such a thing where we add the mind to the heart, body, and soul. What we hear in sort of biblical, circles, that I think it really starts with the mind. And so what I do is, as a crisis counselor, I always find people in my communities, whether it's my hometown or the church, local parish here, they kind of find me out in the fellowship and they ask me a lot of things, whether it's parents who have kids going through crisis or parents themselves in crisis. I'm always genuinely just responding to needs. But I find that now in my local parish, with the elder of our church, we're trying to expand more on what we can provide at early intervention, access to mental health. And this is kind of a great bridge opportunity for me to come in and not only engage, figure out ways to serve and help, but also take all the knowledge and what I'm learning now, especially tonight, and bring it back to my communities and employ them, because there's a lot of work to be done out there with the dynamics of spiritual, religious sort of trauma and crisis. So there you go. Hopefully I said that enough and concise enough.
Well, again, thank you for just showing up. And you did mention that you would like to give your testimony in the docuseries, which
yes, absolutely.
Comment on the end. And Dr. Liu, again, we would love for you to come back and definitely like to speak into the docuseries. I want to see if Alok is available. And Alok is also a recent new team member that comes to us from the No Stigma Network, which actually starts to show we keep bringing connections together of other nonprofits or LLCs, organizations, advocacy groups that really all start to find each other. So Alok, if you would introduce us both from your business background, because you have a business background and you care about No Stigma Network and this docuseries. Is it mute?
You're on mute.
Is there a way to unmute?
He's unmuted.
Yeah. Hello, can you try speaking? Why is it not working?
You might need to go into settings and adjust where your microphone input is coming from.
So as Alok is doing that, and Dr. Liu may not stay to the end, do we have any just links back to Dr. Liu? Because that part of this whole project really began with the DSM-4 of 1994 when the spiritual and religious issue thing came in. I went on Wall Street in 2005. Said, nobody's paying attention. I'm glad
Yeah, we hear you.
Yes. So I just
Oh, you hear me now?
Yes. I just wanted to do like a little loop, Dr. Liu, to you're still here with any questions and we might do the follow-up. But just for your information, I did go on Wall Street in 2005 to say, does anybody know there's a religious spiritual V code? And I was a subject of somebody that they did not pay attention to it. And I was looking to get funding for training. And you may or may not know, I was put in the hospital 9 days after Wall Street. So you and I will talk. So we really, really appreciate you being here and that you've pursued since the 90s to get here. So now that we know.
Janet, can I just ask while Dr. Liu's here and maybe Josh, you alluded to having with your personal spiritual experience some degree related to moral injury. Would you mind sharing that and hearing Dr. Liu's comments just so that we have a more practical idea? What are we talking about and how important it is? Because I think it's much more important than we're recognizing sometimes.
Yes, and that can extend to others, because even if it wasn't a spiritual experience, there's been moral injury from a number of us of how we were treated. So go ahead, Josh.
Thanks, Dr. Chadlos. Yeah, I mean, I was just responding in chat because I think it's what God is maybe putting in our midst here, this moral injury thing. So when I read about the update of the DSM, by the way, congrats on the conditional approval of that. It said it's a confusion about right or wrong, whether the person is good themselves. Well, in my bipolar psychosis, in quotes, I thought that right was wrong and wrong was right, and light was dark and dark was light. And it was a big paradigm shift. So I had no idea. I mean, I also believed that I was enlightened. So that comes the spiritual component. So I both had that aspect, and I had the part that I was being told that I was broken. I was being told that I was bad and my behaviors were bad. So this is based on reductionist materialist psychiatry, who telling you, sorry, bro, your brain's broken. It's called mental illness. You're sick in the head. It's like, well, really? Because I thought I just discovered God. So this can really shut down the healing aspect. Spirituality can be physically healing, mentally healing. And so that's why I would like to talk to you, Dr. Liu, about creating a training for mental health providers and faith professionals in San Diego. But what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Liu, if you have any, about when light seems dark and dark seems light, and being told that you're broken by the medical profession?
Well, I think that what happens when people have psychiatric disorders like bipolar or schizophrenia, I think what happens with people is that they may have the so-called psychotic symptoms or the mood symptoms, what's in the DSM criteria for those disorders. But at the same time, I do think that a group of people also have these kind of spiritual awakening experiences, or that touch on the transpersonal aspects of consciousness, such as you've described. And unfortunately, mental health professionals are not trained to about the spiritual aspects of life. So these statements, these experiences are then all lumped together as a form of psychosis or as a symptom of psychosis. And I think that that's an ongoing problem. Now, the creation of this religious or spiritual problem category, in fact, does allow the possibility of having a diagnosis of bipolar disorder and religious or spiritual problem, if you will, because you may have been distressed about having such experiences. They may have been very euphoric, but at the same time, they may be a little distressing because it kind of blows away your everyday sense of reality. And so if the psychiatrist has just completely blocked out this realm of experience or this category of religious or spiritual problem, then they would interpret what you just said there as just symptoms of the psychosis, and that's the problem. That's the problem. I must say that we're talking 30 years after the creation of this category. This has not really penetrated clinical practice to a great extent, even though I think there's been some progress in that area, but we still have a long ways to go. Now, I think adding the moral injury component here might also give more traction to these issues being important. I put in the website a website of Wendy Dean, MD.com, and she has written a book and has presented about moral injury in medicine, in healthcare providers experiencing this experience of moral injury. And so my hope is that maybe the field will pay more attention to these kinds of again, distressing experiences that are not mental disorders and need to be addressed and need to be supported in a way that recognizes them not as mental disorders. And that's so critical. That's so
Yes.
critical.
Yes.
Amen again.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, come on now.
I
Yeah.
would love Reverend Sparks to just even comment because you've been one of the best inquirers over the last months to say, Janet, explain what you mean by spiritual and spiritual emergency. And not that we're going to put the full definition, but do you have any comment to Dr. Liu before he has to go?
Well, first of all, I think between Dr. Liu, Josh, and Carlito, and yours, it has made it clear. But I also want to ask Dr. Liu, while you're dealing with the moral injury with the medical, have we consulted with seminaries? Because that's where there will be another moral injury, because most denominations will not recognize any kind of spiritual crisis the same way. And that was one of the challenges that I presented to Dr. Chatlos and to Janet, is every denomination or every religious organization will view a religious experience different. And so, but if you get it to the seminary level, at least start to have conversation, because that's a place where they're very liberal. To begin conversation may take a while to adopt, but at least there's conversation that can happen at the seminary level.
Right. I have no idea to what extent religious or spiritual problem in DSM has penetrated any training in seminaries. I really don't know. I know that APA, starting in 2016, has formed a faith and mental health partnership initiative. It started then, it then laid fallow for a while, but it was restarted a few years ago to increase the dialogue between psychiatrists and faith leaders, along the lines of what Josh said, that we've really got to work together. And definitely that's the case. There's another very important document. I'll try to find the link and put it in the chat here before I leave. That's a very important document. It's a APA resource document written by the Committee on Ethics with the input from the Executive Committee of the Caucus on Religion, Spirituality, and Psychiatry, and I'm on that executive committee, in which it describes how psychiatrists should approach religious or spiritual issues. Again, this came out a couple of years ago. I don't think it's penetrated clinical practice, but it is and a resource document does not carry the full weight of the APA as an organization, but it is meant to provide guidance, and it's coming from the Committee on Ethics. So I'll try to find that and put it in the chat while you continue. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
And whatever you don't find, just send it to me, because I'll send a follow-up out to this. So thank you so much. I do still want to invite Alok to stay with the introduction moment. Alok, you do not have to describe anything, but you do have lived experience, and you support the No Stigma Network, and you're out there in business. And also partnering with us. So,
No,
yeah.
thank you, Janet, and thank you, everyone. It's Reverend Sparks. It's nice to see you. Reverend Sparks and I know each other. I also
There you go. He improved it. Wherever you show up, Reverend Sparks is there.
That's right. So I also support the Emergency Housing and Advocacy Program. It's actually where we met, and then I met Shrubany through there. So I do support some very comprehensive charitable organizations. My background is as a licensed architect and structural engineer. but I am constantly learning this matrix that we're in right now. I recently, in the past 3 years, had a mental break myself. I'd had previous ones in my life, but the one that I had 3 years ago was probably most notable. It was a milestone in my life to change for the better. I was hospitalized for a week, and then was in outpatient for a number of months with Princeton House near where I live. And it was probably the best thing that had ever happened to me, because it made things so clear. And so I really appreciate the dialogue that I've been hearing in this platform. And Janet, thank you for having me here, and I look forward to being in future sessions.
Well, let's just stop there for a second. Thank you. What I love is, again, you also said you will speak into the documentary. You'll be part of Dr. Chatlos and No Stigma Network and my work to kind of combine. We're going to try to combine 3 organizations and make something move. And you've just sincerely said you want to help support moving this documentary forward, which needs a lot of business sense. We need your business sense and passion.
Absolutely. And I'll just say, Dr. Chalos, I was really moved by how you spoke at the No Stigma Network event. I was the unofficial photographer of the event, but how you spoke caused me to come up and want to take a picture of you guys, and that was an excuse to say hello and speak to you more. So thank you for that. I believe in the movement that you guys are pushing forward, and I suppose my business acumen really comes from a marriage of life experience and being thrown into various high-level, high-pressure, boiler room style business scenarios where I decided to swim instead of sink. So I had been in industry, working for top Fortune 100 companies, handling an East Coast, a whole East Coast perspective on their business for construction. And, here I am now just trying to figure out myself, to be honest with you.
That's more complicated.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I do love, I'm getting more in my comfort zone. I'm getting more business people coming in close to me. So I need that. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to actually ask, I'm going to still do introductions and then we'll go into final announcements. One of our representatives from 988 Rollout in New Jersey, Betty Jean, apologized. She's not able to be here. I'm going to ask Dr. Chatlos to comment on briefly behind the scenes. And I think it's kind of perfect timing. And again, Alok, you and no one else has to talk about any detail. But I know I was picked up by the police against my will. Joshua, you were too. And Betty Jean is working with the state from Carillon Behavioral Health on the Home 988 rollout. How can we be more sensitive in general to mental health? And Dr. Chatlos and I are saying, how can we be more sensitive to the spiritual emergency experience? I don't know whose background noise that is, but is it mine? Somebody's background. All right. So, Dr. Chatlos, could you comment on our intention with Betty Jean and 988?
Yeah, and let me just highlight, because some of you may not be so aware of it. Normally, when there's a crisis and emergency, people immediately call 911, which automatically brings police. And police are often the element that's responsible for people almost being obligated to be taken to emergency rooms and hospitalized, and all of the problems, or some of the problems we're talking about. 988 is a national, not just Jersey, national attempt to change that by the first caller's contact is not police, but a screening group or person that determines, do we call police? It's a true emergency, or do we bring in a mental health team? Do we bring in a faith community-based something else? So that's the national thing. But what we're looking at is New Jersey has hired an agency to implement it for the whole state. So that we've got one agency, and as far as we can tell nationally, they are talking about cultural competence, but none of it includes spiritual competence. So if we can just impact them enough to, especially our logo, are we aware of religious and spiritual experience? Just that in the back of the mind may, like Dr. Lou said, have them think twice. And that's really what we want. We want them to stop and think and maybe consider that it isn't just mental health, psychiatric, it may be spiritual. And even further, can we, as Josh suggested, not only not harm it, but can we promote it? Can we use it as a growth opportunity, which is really ideally where we want to carry all of our interests. So we have a wonderful opportunity here in New Jersey to affect the entire system if we can work with Betty Jean and the 988 group to at least just bring in spiritual awareness. So that's pretty much it.
So there's
And
a great
really a powerhouse.
yes.
Dr. Chatlos, that's exactly why I am completely on board. This happened to me. And just in a nutshell, you know, I had an attempt, and then I spoke to a therapist. The cops were called. I went to a hospital where I was cleared. I went home. Then the cops came to my door again at midnight, and they said they weren't satisfied that I had been released in the custody of my family. There were 10 people in my home that night. They took me back against my will, and this is exactly why I am all for what you are representing right now.
Oh boy, that's heartbreaking. That's exactly not the way it's supposed to work.
And that's 2023. That's last year. Alok, thank you for giving us a brief. Anyone, you know, Dr. Chatlos, I know would love to talk with you, but thank you. You are the latest, 2023, where the system violated you, especially when you had full family support.
Yeah.
Full family support. So in the matter of time, I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you for your courage to say that. Is everyone, I know, Josh, you have to go. Yeah, moral injury right there. Yes. Joshua, if you have to go or anybody has to go, we have an official close at 8. Is anyone okay to go for 10 more minutes, 8:10?
Sorry, Josh, before you go, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the cadence of how you spoke and the content of what you said. I could probably listen to you speak all day.
Then I'll speak all day, Alok. Please, I'll put my email in the chat. Please, let's connect. I would love that.
Oh, wait till you see Josh's site on Facebook and his workshops, like a powerhouse. All right, I'm gonna.
I love you guys. This is amazing.
Joshua, I actually want you in the movie, not just the documentary. I want you in the movie.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am.
All right,
I'll do it. But
All
I'm
right.
going to sign off you guys. Thanks so much.
All
for
right.
having me.
So
God bless you.
wait. Is it okay to invite Joshua back?
I can stay.
All right, but can we invite Joshua back in September? We do. All right.
Yep.
Thumbs up.
I
Okay.
got the thumbs
You're
up.
welcome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all that can't be here, especially Dr. Lou. Thanks for taking the time out. This has been very helpful and timely.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
The only one agenda I want to do is what has recently happened and what's coming up. So basically, we went through introductions. Dr. Chatlos, would you let us know you have moved on from Rutgers, now an Avatar, what you're doing? Some kind of back feed here is, I don't know. But then I'm going to ask you to just go over, you've done an Ajama conference, we're working on a first responder. Just kind of give us an update of where you are in transition from to, and some of the activities you've been doing.
Yeah, as Janet said, I left Rutgers after a total of 25 years because I got the dream job of my life offer, where I am being asked to take an addiction rehabilitation treatment center that's already doing good work, and we're going to develop a unknown approach that doesn't just look at spirituality. We will be promoting spiritual awakenings. We think we know how to do it. We know how to measure it. And the owner has said that I can do whatever I want to make that happen. So I could not ask for more. And the staff is great. It's in New Jersey. In fact, I'm up there, way up north right now. So that's my most exciting piece, that I get to put the theory into practice and see what can really happen when a staff are dedicated to it. We hope to, at some point, expand to, right now it's just adults. We hope to move into first responders because there's really a need in this area. But in addition to that, I'm helping Janet to work with 988. I think, as I say, I think New Jersey is poised for the place to have a spiritual awakening in a positive way. That the state government, the 988, the institutions, Guardian Network is here in New Jersey. The place I'm at is called Avatar. It's here in New Jersey. So that we've just got something coming together. So I guess the biggest concern is, how do we get this coalition off the ground? And Janet, I'm going to have to tell you, I had promoted and advertised training workshops to get this theory and to get some mental health and faith community leaders together. And we had almost only 5 people register for 4 workshops. So we're probably, Janet, going to cancel them. Yeah. We're not ready. We don't have the network out there. So rather than keep taking our time, we're probably going to cancel the rest of them. And we'll have to find another way to bring. And I think that, Reverend Sparks, is really what has not been solved in Jersey. How do we really get the mental health and the faith community together to, I forget who said it, show the mental health, the spiritual, and the faith community, the mental health piece.
Yeah.
We don't have any place in New Jersey that really is doing it or knows how to do it. So we need help. So I think that's it, Janet, for now. Oh, and I got invited to give a talk on spirituality to a neuroscience international conference that's taking place in Budapest. So I'm leaving there Friday night, a week in Budapest.
All right.
Collect our global team. Come on, guys.
So we're going to see what the neuroscientists around the world think. That at their neuroscience conference, there's a talk on spirituality. I think they're not going to know what to do with it.
Excellent. You know, again, for the sake of time, Calvin, we could talk about other activities, but to keep it short, because we've been doing presentations, we'll kind of leave that for your look on the links if you want. But let me go through a few closing pieces. Calvin and I are invited in July to speak to a national group on AWARE. Are we aware of religious experiences? And the group is first responders. They're EMTs, they're police officers, firefighters. And it's the second time I'm invited back, but we're bringing Dr. Chatlos in. So this logo up here was started by a first responder who's partnering with us. We're working out of Chicago. So we are doing something in New Jersey, but we're already being brought into Chicago and nation. My vision is we're going to bring this across the nation. And part of that is connecting to 988 in New Jersey, 988 across the nation. So there's the really, really cool movements. I'll keep that brief. Reverend Sparks, can you comment about We Are Monmouth And Carlito, it doesn't involve you. You're on Hoboken, but you know what? You could always come down.
I'll come down.
What is We Are Monmouth? Because I think that's also a fabulous movement.
Yeah. We Are Monmouth was started by the Monmouth County Prosecution Office. Many of the chaplains from the prosecution office get involved with law enforcement. So the chaplains, mental health agencies, faith-based leaders, anyone who wants to be involved in the community come together and they talk about how law enforcement is dealing with mental health issues and how they can better develop the programs that may come from the Attorney General's office, and how that can be implemented in the lives of the law enforcement officers, the prosecution office, to ensure that what we've talked about doesn't happen or to limit it. Now, Dr. Chatlos, one of the things you may want to do is partner with We Are Monmouth, and that may be a strategic way to start something because you do have faith-based clergy who would be interested in what you would have to say, particularly the group that's up at Jersey Shore or Jersey Medical, which I'm sure that they would be interested, and maybe some other faith-based leaders. And that might be an opportunity also. Any local, like New Brunswick Theological Seminary, Princeton Theological Seminary, Drew Theological Seminary, maybe invite either their pastoral care professors or any other of the professors in the theological school that would be interested to start having that conversation locally. While we may not be able to address the academy as a whole, we can at least develop something that we can begin to invite them to at least hear the conversation.
So rather than tackle the whole state, let's start locally, and
That's
you've
correct.
already got some connections. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm going to reiterate, Reverend Akins, even off the side of his thought, he said, Janet, maybe we can invite you to present at the next We Are Monmouth. I'm going to now substitute what Dr. Chatlos could do, because to host a public event is very hard, but once a public event is hosted, adding Dr. Chatlos's message to it is easier. Right. So let's look at it. Dr. Chatlos, July 12th.
Okay.
It's June 13th is the next one.
Oh, June or July?
June 13th at 1 p.m.
That's the Monmouth.
We Are Monmouth.
Okay. Yeah. It moved to June 13th.
Now that I can't make.
Okay.
Okay.
And it's at the Church of St. Anselm in Tinton Falls. And I put it in the chat, the information.
I did see that. I thought it was July. So what we can expect is once a quarter. The next one would then be September.
Yeah.
September, October. All right. And then Carlito, you can comment, but let's talk offline. Your organization has, a major constituency.
Yep.
We can look at what are you doing where we could show up at something.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. One, Dr. Chatlos, I was going to say, what Janet sent in LinkedIn, just our three-way chat. I think it was part of it was me, how I, in my workplace, cultivating mental health, but then also in my own local parish, my church in Garden State Church, gardenstatechurch.com, the elder here and we started a series called Crisis and Trauma, Below the Waterline, because of my crisis work, and the elder, he does a lot of trauma counseling. But we're also, last Wednesday, Janet did send out, or, she has a link that I can send you on our health empowerment group on how we're explaining mental health to our congregation. How we're doing. I did all the speaking, really most of it, 30 minutes. And then our doctor, physician doctor practitioner did something on the physical effects of spiritual trauma and heart disease. So I went through the mental health aspect, but the elder and I were trying to figure out how to connect the dots on mental health and spiritual faith. So to equip everyone. So
I'm the one you should talk to about
more to come. Yeah, it's very much collaborative efforts. Absolutely. And then on 988, definitely get me involved, because I've been with since 2019, I've been with Crisis Text Line as a certified crisis counselor and peer support specialist.
Oh, wow.
And then also for the New Jersey Division of Mental Health Services. I'm a disaster response crisis counselor.
Oh,
Yeah, I've been with them since 2022 because I'm getting recertified in my continuing ed classes. So a lot of some deployment up here in Passaic County, more Passaic County, not really
is
Hudson
that
County.
where you are?
Yeah, I'm in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, that's Hudson County. Yeah,
Hudson County.
but in Passaic County, that's where the elder of our church is from, and I've been deployed there before for disaster response, which has had to do with grief and loss for a high school situation. But yeah,
So that's
a
where our
lot of
treatment-
crossroads there. A lot of crossroads.
Our treatment center is up in Ringwood,
Okay.
so Passaic County.
Yep. Now, there's a lot here we can figure out collaborating along the ways during the summer.
Cool.
A lot.
And I'll be visiting Janet. I'll be visiting Janet down in the Jersey Shore. She's
Oh,
already invited me.
all right. Just to, again, I could stay forever.
Yep.
Business wise, you spend days and full days. So like we did a lot in an hour and a quarter. Carlito and I are talking Wednesday. We're going to keep that connection. We are going to meet at Sandy Hook over the summer. Calvin, you will be invited when you're back.
Okay.
But what was I going to say? So there's amazing good stuff. I'm going to stop. Carlito, what was this like to be invited to this? This is an example of a coalition meeting.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you, it's opened such wealth of resource opportunity and hope, a lot of hope, that's for sure. Inspiration and hope of what we're all like-minded, and we all know, I think, the challenges and issues in our communities. And it's very much an eternal thing, right? And we only scratch the surface. So the amount of work that's out there, wow, it's just so great to know that there's some resources here and we're going to partner together. So a lot of hope and inspiration for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
What a blessing to have
It
met.
is.
And Carlito was introduced by Heather Sims. So, all this groundwork we do eventually kind of connects. The intent is we spend the summer working behind the scenes.
Okay.
And we move stuff so that by the time we come back in September, we can actually report on real things, real movement.
Like
And we're very close. So,
I can tell. This is great.
Yeah. So, Calvin, as you leave the country and finish up our coalition for this part of the year, you were the one that instituted get this started, Janet. November 2nd, you asked to get it started.
That's right. On that presentation.
You asked,
Yeah.
yeah. How do you feel now? It's 8 months. How do you feel as like a closing comment on our coalition?
It's, you know what? It's less of a dream and more likely to be a reality. There are so many pieces that are really getting in place.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised as to how much commonality in purpose there really is. There's almost, once people hear stories like some of you shared tonight, it's like, come on, this should not be happening, and let's just fix it.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Let's just fix it.
And that makes me want to record some of the more recent ones. Alec was brave to share his, briefly tonight. Didn't have to. Carlito, you did.
It was very nice. The sharing was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think if people get to watch what you recorded for tonight alone, it might move them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'm going to close with a very tactical, because we got business thought here.
Okay.
Calvin, you offered, and Carlito, this is part of a business thing that just doesn't seem to get the attention. Calvin and I are the only two investors in this project, and offline I'll explain how much we already invested. But Calvin, why don't you state your message, and then Carlito talk offline.
We've been doing this. We have enough pieces, but we need to put something definite together. So, and it's going to take some money. So, what for the documentary? Right. Even a small trailer or presentation, and I put up an offer. I'll match anyone's contributions up to $10,000 so that we have enough money to get a producer and make it happen by fall, not next year. We can't keep waiting till next year. So how we can leverage that and invite people to contribute so that, you know, together we'll have $20,000 and that should get us there.
Yeah.
So if
That's
there's
the
any way,
finish line.
anyone-
Yeah, that's the start. That's
anyone
the
with
finish
business can help us. Yeah.
Right. Understood.
So we've recorded it. We have a plan to reach out to philanthropists and investors, but I appreciate being able to say it in front of a businessman who says, "Yep, this is going to bring us close."
Yeah, let me try and figure out ways I can connect some dots here too. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need to make it happen. We've got the ideas, we've got the people, and it's just now a matter of what's the project that we can all pull together specifically and very concretely on. So, very good.
And I'll be a little more detailed Wednesday when I say, here's all the work product. We have quite a few different pieces, and then here's the finish line. So I'm going to thank you for that offer, Calvin, and Carlito. Thank you for staying to the end.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
This was a
good
great
to meet you,
8 months.
Carlito.
Yes.
Pleasure to meet you
forward to
too.
working-
Looking forward to more work together. Yeah,
working with you.
absolutely.
Excellent. All right. Well,
All right. Bye, Janet.
sign off. Thank you.
Good night.
Take care, Janet.